I really feared failure. I was afraid that if I go out on this limb, I'm liable to fail. And wouldn't that be terrible? Well, what I learned as I got older is failure is A-okay. Failure teaches you a lot about what not to do. And so I wish I had not been so afraid of failure during my life. And so I wanted to make a story out of this one. And the story kind of goes like this. And some of you may know this. I did not know this until I was like in my mid-50s. And I grew up in Cocoa Beach. I should have known this. Alan Shepard, being awarded by President Kennedy there, launched Freedom 7 on May 5th, 1961. So in 2 more months, we're going to have the 50th anniversary of Alan Shepard's launch. Okay, now not to take a thing away from Alan Shepard, but you know what he did? He didn't go to orbit. It wasn't until a year later that John Glenn went to orbit. Alan Shepard had a 15-minute suborbital flight. He went up, came back down 15 minutes from liftoff. He was back in the Atlantic Ocean. But he was an astronaut, and he made a lot of progress for us as a nation. But I just want you to remember that's all he did. Again, not to take a thing away from him. So he had this, there's a picture of the original 7, by the way, and Alan Shepard is the second to the right. After his flight, he got awarded by the president. But here's the thing that I think you'll appreciate. May 5th, 61, he had this suborbital flight. May 25th of 61, 20 days later, the president stands before the whole world and says, basically, now that we have such significant human spaceflight experience under our belt, I think we ought to go to the moon and back. And just to make it interesting, why don't we do it in the next 8.5 years? Profound courage, in my opinion, not just of the man, but of a nation willing to take the chances to put a stretch goal out there and strive to achieve it. And it just taught me profound things, that we weren't afraid of failure with Apollo, and look at all this that's evolved because of it. So I just love to think 20 days after a suborbital flight, and months before we put the first man in orbit, we make this declaration of going to the moon. So indeed, 8 years later, there it is sitting on the pad, 7.5 million pounds of thrust, and liftoff. By the way, my pictures, I think I can tell you unequivocally, are not Photoshopped. I tried to keep them clean because I don't care for Photoshopping. You can kind of make it what you want to make it. This is one of the originals of the Apollo 11 launch on July 16th, going past the American flag. So I pose to you the challenge. Are we going to fear failure, or are we going to go explore the unknown the way I hope we will? This is a picture of Ares 1 and Ares 5, part of the Constellation program that was just canceled, and we can talk about that during Q&A if you like, which is coming up in 37 minutes. But I just encourage us not to be afraid of failure. By the way, on that point, I'd like you to know that one of the deceased female astronauts, Laurel Clark, on the Columbia mission, her husband, who also worked at the Johnson Space Center, came for our memorial service less than a week after Columbia, and he challenged the nation. He said, I ask you, are we going to be a space-fearing nation, or are we going to be a space-faring nation? And this is a man who just lost his life to a tragic space accident, and yet 6 days later, he's encouraging us to not be a space-fearing nation. We have to go explore the unknown, and I think he's a great man.